Mark, I can't end a day with you, even though we talk about book publishing. I can't end a day with you without moving into the prophetic. We both have such a passion to really hear the voice of the Lord and know where God's taken us. Where do you see the church? What do we have to do?
Well, let me at least preface that by saying I believe there are some both critical and crucial things that are taking place right now that if we respond appropriately to them, I believe the church can be a real catalyst to move it into the next phase of God's restoration program. Phyllis Tickle, a lay theologian in the Episcopal Church, talks about the 500-year cycles in history, and she parallels church biblical events from the beginning with secular events. She places the rise of Confucius with I believe the prophet Isaiah and all the things that were going on the planet then. But she talks about how history moves in 500-year cycles, particularly as it relates to the flow of biblical history. There are 500-year cycles. Mm-hmm. And she says that every 500 years, the church has a rummage sale and gets rid of its stuff that it's collected that are more traditional than they are the organic meat and substance of what the original intent was by God.
Yes, these days we'd call them yard sales.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so we are at the end of another 500-year period. The Reformation period from the 1600s till now brings us, or the late 1500s, brings us to the end of a 500-year period. The secularists are talking about 2012. Some Bible prophecy guys are talking about the apocalypse, the world ending in 2012. I'm not persuaded that we're going to get out of here that quickly, but I am persuaded that we are heading for a radical shift in the way we see who we are, the way we be who we are, and the way we do what we do. And I believe there are some major transformations that need to take place. If we are going to be effectively seasoning the world we live in and making an impact for transformation, that requires that we know what wants to emerge in the future and then step into the place of giving it expression so that we become the generative influence on the planet to bring to birth the new thing that wants to emerge.
Powerful.
And so we're called to be generative. We're called to give birth to things. The challenge is a lot of times what we do that we call creativity for us is we take something that's been done and just repackage it and call it new, which holds us not only to the present moment, it confines us to repeating the past. And as I see reality and a worldview from what I see in the eternal dimension, as I read through the Holy Scriptures, I see a worldview that's creative. I don't see a worldview that's fixed. I see a worldview that's dynamic and always creative, and that new things are constantly emerging. As a matter of fact, while we may quote, "There's nothing new under the sun," we have to remember that Solomon wrote that after the corruption of all his wisdom by eating at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So he said, vanity of vanities, everything's vanity. Well, if you eat at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, every fruit is going to be death, 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 death. And yet the Son of God said, "Behold, I make all things new." And so there is something that wants to emerge that I believe requires that we as sons and daughters of the Creator position ourselves to dream the way God dreams. You know, when Jesus says, "Pray, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven," that word "will" there in the Greek is thelema. It doesn't mean ironclad, written in stone, unchangeable will. It means wishes or dreams. And so Jesus said, when you address God, Address
Wow.
God from this perspective, that his wishes and dreams would find expression
my.
in the earth
That's awesome.
in the same way that his wishes and dreams are carried out in the realm of the
Yes.
timeless.
Yes.
So are there any wishers and dreamers on the planet that can, in spite of how dark things may look right now, still see the dawning of a brand new day and a new era emerging, where there will be a sweeping, incredible hunger for the things of the eternal dimension,
Yes.
and so that we can, as a generation of Christ, begin to move into a place where God's eternal purpose can be accelerated, because we as a generation, in the midst of darkness, in the midst of trouble, in the midst of confusion, in the midst of economic upheaval and famine, we saw a day beyond that, and were able to not only recognize it, but begin to articulate it. And by articulating it, we make a world for people to live in that doesn't exist yet. The famous theologian Klaus Westermann, German theologian, said that we don't understand David when he makes declarations in the Psalms. But when David makes declarations in the Psalms, it is often in the face of opposition, and the very thing he is declaring contradicts the reality he's experiencing. And yet what Westermann says, this classic German theologian, is that David in the Psalms, when he makes those declarations, is in the process of world making. And he said, as believers, our task in worship and in the Word is to be making worlds.
But see, here's the challenge. As you know, 11 years ago, we started Destiny Image Europe in Pescara, Italy. And I don't think there's a place more steeped in tradition and more steeped in history than Italy. But I brought a word to them that they embraced. It's just real simple. If you always see what you've always seen, you'll always do what you've always done. So if you want to do things you've never done before, you got to be willing to see things you have never seen. Now, how does the average Christian risk, and I put that in parentheses because not everybody calls it a risk, to see beyond what they've learned? So many Christians don't feel comfortable getting revelation on their own because they're told that they have to be taught, that they have to be told, they just have to listen and obey. But the world isn't changed by listeners.
Right.
The world is changed by wishers.
Right. And maybe the reality is when certain believers, Christians, say that they're not comfortable receiving revelation, the challenge I would invite them to look at is that if God is in them, they're getting revelation all the time. The problem is they may not be recognizing it as God, because it comes disguised in the form of their own desires, their own dreams, their own wishes, and their own untapped potential that they may never have been affirmed in.
Oh, so the wishes I may have are really God's wishing through me.
Exactly.
Or the dreams I have is the dreamer dreaming through
Yeah.
me.
You know, when Solomon says, trust in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart, I have a take on that, because we read that as trust in the Lord and your desires will come to pass. I believe what Solomon could be saying there is trust in the Lord and trust those desires, but then take those desires and then begin to move in intention until the desire becomes a vision, the vision becomes a reality, and you begin to bring it to birth in your experience. Because Jesus said, whatsoever you desire when you pray. Now, church leaders in the system want to put conditions on what Jesus said. But there were no conditions on what Jesus said when he said, whatsoever you desire. That word desire, and if I give you the etymology from the Latin, which comes from desidere.
I believe you.
But bottom line, that word desire means something's missing. So here's the thing. Whatever you are missing in your life that you yearn for, whatever is missing is what you yearn for,
That's awesome.
and you are yearning for